Welcome back to the Football Fitness Federation podcast. This is episode 357. If you're watching on video, you'll see there's only Mr. Jordan on the podcast today. So, welcome to the podcast, Jordan.
Yeah, it feels weird to be back now. I'm joking. Okay, this is going to be an interesting one, and yeah, one I'm looking forward to doing actually.
Yeah, we're going to go into a bit of a topic that might cause a few different opinions, but we feel like we're in a good position, don't we, to discuss it fairly. And that is the use of external practitioners within football, players using external coaches. And this obviously comes off the back of a championship manager essentially calling out a private coach and the work that that private coach does with one of his players.
Mhm.
So we're not going to get into the details of what actually happens with that player because we are we don't know.
Yeah,
So I don't think that's right. But what we can talk about is the use of external coaches, which we talk about a lot on the podcast. But I think it'd be right to use this episode to really focus in on maybe the do's and don'ts, some best practice,
yeah,
and how we move forward as an industry as well. Because I know there's been talks of banning external coaches and things like that, which I don't really know how that's going to go down.
Mm.
But yeah, I thought we'd get our opinion and our experiences across as well. Um, so I don't really know where to start with it, Jordan. I don't know if there's anything that jumps out initially just from the back of obviously what was said. Is there anything that you wanted to bring up initially from that?
yeah. I think straight away, it obviously caused a lot of discussion, didn't it? And obviously, we know very well the practitioner involved in said incident, and we've seen them firsthand and all this sort of stuff. So I think first and foremost, um, we would wanted to defend the situation which happened because of the practitioner involved and being personally called out by said manager. Um, I mean, I've seen him. There's in the practitioner that's involved in this firsthand at our facility down here on the south coast because he was working with the same player actually in our facility, and we know this practitioner very well. We know he's one of the best in terms of our industry as a private. When I say our industry, I mean as a private coach. We both are private coaches, so automatically some people might say we're biased because we both work with players, but we've also both worked with players at clubs as part of a club staff. So we have a foot in both camps for both of us, I would say. Um, so I would try and I like to think we're not too biased, but having seen the practitioner firsthand working with this player as well, like he's excellent. There's no two ways about it. Absolutely excellent. The level of detail is outstanding. I got to see it firsthand in my facility down here on the South Coast because he was working with the player, needed a place to train and work with the player down on the South Coast. That's where it all came about. So I saw it firsthand, and he was there for hours, going into incredible detail, and our staff were going, "Wow, like, that's really impressive." So straight away, I think after the incident came out and it got into the media, and obviously the manager said what he said, I think we obviously spoke about it privately, messaged each other and stuff, and we wanted to, I think, defend the practitioner because, like I said, we've seen him do some outstanding work. And it sparked a really good discussion in our community WhatsApp group, obviously. And I think what was really good to see was I spoke to a few other people and a few guys that we know, like Wayne Richardson as well, who also know the practitioner in question. Um, the outcry, I will say outcry, the public outcry of support for this practitioner was really high. And Wayne made a really good point to us, didn't he? Both privately, both messaging us separately as well, saying that the person that the manager has named and in inverted commas shamed over this incident is one of the best in the business that does it really really well. So probably going after one of the best in the industry for it. So I think there's a reason that a lot of players will go to him because he is very very good. So yeah, it raises lots of hot topics really. We can go down many many rabbit holes, but I think first and foremost, our immediate reaction to it was we wanted to defend the practitioner in question because we know he's one of the very good ones and does it in the right way. Because we also know the club staff at the club which are involved, and we know they're very very good as well. And we know full well that they have been speaking and they have they do the right things in terms of comms and communication between the club and the practitioner. So Yeah, really interesting topic, this one. I think there's lots of potential landmines to step on here as well. But like you said, I think we're in a position where I think it's right that we speak about this because a lot of our listeners are either private coaches or they work at clubs and they have to liaise with private coaches. And like I said, we ourselves have our private coaches now and also have been club coaches. So yes, lots to dig into, really, isn't there? Yeah.
I think the thing that I'd like to bring up is maybe some of the comments, and I've not got the direct quotes here, but the sort of comments around just training these players, charging them through the roof, posting things on social media just to boost your profile, which we know there are people like that out there.
Hmm.
But that was probably the thing that really like got me the most because I'm like,
Yeah.
that is just not the case with the person involved.
Mm.
And I know that the work they put out is probably a very small part, like you mentioned, in terms of detail of what they actually deliver to the player.
Mm.
Um, and that was one of the things where I was like, you seem to be taking players' use of private coaches and grouping all these people together and just stick and thinking that they're all doing exactly the same thing. And it's like that is just not the case. There's very different levels. There's levels of players just going into some random gym somewhere, paying not that much for some random trainer to not really understand the demands of football or what the player needs at that time, probably putting them through a workout where they're just trying to batter them or to try and capture some footage of them that can help their profile.
Mm.
There is that level. And
Mm.
then there's the complete other level of the spectrum where you've got practitioners like the person involved that have worked at the highest level, um, the top league in England, with
Mhm.
arguably the top team in the country as well,
Mhm.
with some of the best players around. They understand completely the demands of what these players are going through. They also know what players can, what they're maybe coming to for him in terms of extras as well. And when you look at the work that they're doing, a lot of it is based. You can see that they're working around what the player is doing day to day as well.
Yeah.
So there's this level, which is a
Yeah.
completely different end of the spectrum. But the comments that were made was just like, oh no, all these external coaches are grouped in together. This is what they do, and this is what they all use it for.
Mm.
And I think that's the point where he's like, no, that's wrong.
Mm.
That isn't right at all.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I think that was one of the main things for me that I wanted to bring up to say that we know that it happens at both ends. We've seen firsthand some of the amazing work that these coaches do, and we've had a number of them on the podcast as well. The likes of the person we're talking about, who we're not naming on the episode because they don't feel it's right, but there's other coaches you mentioned, Wayne Richardson, Sam Peeps. There's plenty of others that are doing some incredible work with players, both in season and off season. There's also a facility down south, isn't there, on the south coast that do some half work.
Yeah. So something
Um,
called, yeah, the physical performance hub. Yeah, I've heard
yeah,
about that.
that one.
Yeah,
That's the one. Yeah. But
yeah.
these places exist,
Mm.
but we're not naive in thinking that is the only level of work that's out there. We know that it's not, and there are players that are going to trainers, coaches, practitioners that aren't delivering that standard, which probably falls on us and others to try and lift and educate on that side, which we'd like to do. But yeah, that was the comment where I'm like, that doesn't sit right for me.
Yeah, and it's the classic case of, tarnishing everyone with the same brush, isn't it?
Yeah,
We can, and you can apply that to anything. You literally can. If you wanted to flip it, you could say, all footballers are, bad eggs. And
yeah,
there are some wrong ones out there. There are some
yeah,
who do the wrong things, and there are some absolute, like, we've worked with plenty who are some of the best human beings I know. So tarnishing everyone with the same brush is not the solution. And for context, again, the person in question, or the practitioner in question, who we know, he was in our facility for, I think the session with said player was I think I want to say it was about 3.5 hours long. Um, and it was essentially, the best way of describing it was like a medical screening, but with physical testing in as well. Um, and using multiple different equipment and everything, and it went into incredible detail. Now, if you take that into context, 3.5 hours with one player, you can find out a lot of detail in 3.5 hours. You think of now if you flip that to a club setting and you're doing pre-season testing or screening, let's say we're doing that, 3.5 hours, you're trying to get through most of the squad, if not all of it, depending on what it is. It might be, I don't know, your jump testing, it might be your sprint testing or your mass testing or whatever it is on that day, right? Your first couple of days are going to be worked over for your medical screening and fitness testing, etc., right? But 3.5 hours you wouldn't dedicate to one player. So that straight away tells you that that practitioner is going into that high level of detail with that one player. And then, like you said, though, the flip side, and we've had it, and I mentioned this in the podcast we had with Sam, our head coach. We've had players come to us who have worked with practitioners, and they're a little bit broken, and they've come to us and then gone, "Yeah, I've been with this person. I'm not going to say them. Last week, and my legs are gone." And you sort of start. You don't want to obviously go, "Well, tell me everything. Let's tell you why that's so bad." But you try and pick beneath the surface a little bit and go, "Well, tell me a little bit about the session. What did you do?" And I think from memory, I think it was like 4 or 5 sets of 15 RDLs, relatively heavy. Just volume for volume's sake, it seemed. It really just and just bang after everything supersetted, and he was done, he was finished off the back of a long season, while he's still growing, while he's still maturing as well, because he was a 17-year-old player. So in terms of the context, you go in, that's just you're just making a player sore. That's not quality. That's not thorough detail and thinking exactly what the player needs. That's just, you've come to me for a session, I'll make you feel like you've had a session, and then you can go out the door and we'll go our way. And that is unfortunately what we're working with. And like you said, it does fall on us. It falls on us as a cohort and as an industry to make sure that if we see practice like that, we say, well, that's not right. We can do better. But also championing the people who do it really well. And yeah, you mentioned Sam Peeps, Wayne, others, Alan Jordan, who we know well. There's plenty out there. Like I said, I like to think the Physical Performance Hub, we do it well down here as well. And there's plenty more, absolutely plenty more as well that we I haven't named there, and apologies if we haven't. But there's really good practitioners out there. Like I said, there's also some poor ones. We've just got to try and educate, and also make sure that clubs, if your players are going to individual coaches, clubs need to sort of know where they're going, and also this is where we're going to get into the next level of the topic. Can you start to vet potentially who they're going to? And it works both ways. Can the practitioner speak to the club? Can the club speak to the practitioner? And can that just level of communication just needs to be there? And that will only ever benefit the player. So yeah, that's probably where we'll take that into the next level of discussion now.
We have mentioned that on a previous episode, because I remember speaking to somebody, and I can't remember which episode it was. I don't know if it was us speaking or with someone else on as well, around coaches at clubs potentially knowing coaches in the area and not necessarily referring out to them. But if players are wanting and looking for that, and essentially they are going to go and do it, you have a little bit of control about who they're actually seeing. Yeah. I think that's the reality, because we could say, which was said in the press conference, no, external coaches are now banned. I personally don't think that's going to, players aren't going to stop it. No. And we're using the case that we're talking about here. That player has worked with the practitioner for a longer time than he's been at his current club.
Yeah.
So there's a real element of trust between that player and the practitioner. And like you said, the practitioner knows the player a lot better than his current employers, because of the fact he's spent so much time on a one-to-one basis with him. That's not to say that if the coaches at the club wouldn't have spent the same amount of time with him, they wouldn't be doing the same level of work, because I know at the club we're talking about, the level of work is really high. I've seen it firsthand. We've been there, we've done events there, they've presented the program. Yeah. I know it's quality. That's not what we're saying. Yeah. What we're saying is that the time spent with that player and the trust between practitioner and player becomes really important at this time. And I
Hmm.
think that's the question you've got to ask, isn't it? Why are players pursuing this extra work? And do they feel like, one, they're not getting what they need? Do they feel like they just need to do extra because we're in a super competitive environment where we've got to stand out in the squad, we've got to do more, which again could be good, but it could also mean that we're just adding more on top of more, which doesn't always lead to the best case scenario. But on that as well, if you're working with a coach that's got a good understanding of the schedule and how football works, they're not just going to do volume for the sake of volume or work for the sake of work. They're going to understand what's going on. So I think the power of the player and the decision of the player has to be taken into account because
Hmm.
they're going to make those decisions. It's like going seeing a private physio or a masseuse or getting a chef in. A lot of clubs will have those people in place, but they might want their own person that they can take. They get paid. A lot of players get paid well.
Yeah,
So they're probably going to create their own bubble around them of people that they can just rely on.
yeah,
And yeah, I think obviously a lot of the trends have come from the States, haven't they? They've come from American sports because the NBA and people players in the NBA, the players in the NFL, they've done this for a long time,
yeah.
and it's probably filtered over from there. But this isn't gonna disappear. It's not going to go away. But what we've got to learn as an industry is how we work with it and how we go forward.
Mhm. And clubs, like you say, again, the cat's out the bag. Clubs will never be able to say now. And I go back 10 years. I remember, again, I won't mention the club I was working at and all the player, but a first team player, very Premier League first team player, was going back to their home native country regularly to go and do S&C work rather than using the incredible club staff that were at this Premier League club. Um, and you're thinking, and that was over 10 years ago now, it was 11 years ago now. So you sort of go in, oh, right, okay. Well, it was happening then. The industry's moved on a little bit in terms of it's more popular now that players have their own coaches, their own chefs, their own even analysts, like we say. Um, clubs won't be able to just blanket ban it. And realistically, and the career is a footballer's career. It's not the club's career. As silly as they're saying that is, that probably doesn't make sense. But ultimately, football is, I always describe it to a lot of players, is it's an individual sport within a team setting. So if you are a player and you've worked with a practitioner for many many years and you've gone through injuries together, you know nuances between like complications through surgery or something along those lines, and that practitioner that you've worked with for many years knows that inside out, you're obviously going to trust them really well. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the club staff of that player, and this is just a generic example now, that player might be at a club and that you get to know the club staff and you give them all the detail and all the background on the injury, you go through the medical history, you do all the medical, etc. The club staff are going to have a really good picture of that. But if you have someone you've been working with for 5 years, let's say, or 2 years, or however long it is, and they know that inside out, utilize that. You might as well. Like you just turning a blind eye to something that's going to be really valuable information. So just blanket banning individual coaches, I don't think will work. And players, I know this firsthand because they've done it with us and they've tried to do it with us. Is that they come to you and go, well, we'll just do it in secret.
Mm.
We'll just come to you, and it puts you as the private practitioner in an awkward spot because you sort of go, well, no, we want to do this right. We want to communicate. We want to liaise with your club. We want to do all that sort of stuff. But I know for a fact that some players will just go, no, I just want to do this separate from the club. Just keep it secret, and that automatically is now going to create a really difficult situation
Yeah.
because what happens if a player does turn up and they're injured and it's purely because of your session? What happens then? So realistically, if you go down the lines of banning external practitioners, players will still go and do it. I know that for a fact. I've seen it firsthand. They will go and do it. And then you're opening up the realms of even worse situations. So you might as well accept it. And like you said, I think it was at the conference as well. We had it. We were chatting about it I think it was the EFL roundtable discussion, wasn't it? And then we were talking about this as well. And I think the consensus was, again, from, we're talking S&C sports science practitioners, that these are people at clubs as well. It is better for those clubs to have almost their preferred practitioners, private practitioners that their players can go and see, like you say, the good ones in the area and this and that and the other, that they know they can go and speak to and see and have those good levels of communication. And Jamie Goldsmith spoke very, very well about it at our football fitness event at FSCR, another fantastic facility in London which works privately with players. And the approach of what Palace were taking in terms of they sometimes invite the practitioners, private practitioners in to the club to work with the players, so that not only is it like a little bit of an opportunity to again another touch point, another meet and greet, share ideas, but also use our facilities because our facilities are amazing at the club, and you can literally have eyes on. You know what a brilliant, outstanding attitude that is towards private coaches. That just makes the most sense to me. But I understand why clubs will say no. I think again there is definitely an element of we've always done it this way, or football's always been like this. So why would we change and why would we adapt? I understand that is a thing in football. Um, but again, like everything, I think evolution has to happen. Even as the sayings go, if you don't evolve and you stand still, you sort of become a bit redundant. And I think if that happens, that's going to happen. Um, so yeah, it makes the most sense to me to say you're not going to blanket ban it because players will still do it. You just got to accept it, but you then got to work with it and do it in the right ways.
Another point I wanted to make off the back of the press conference was don't for a minute think that we don't understand the pressures that managers are under as well
Mm.
and club staff, because that comes into it massively, doesn't it? Essentially, what happened in that instance is that their big signing was missing a few games, and what the reason for that was, like we don't know the details, but essentially that was the result of whatever happens, that he wasn't able to select that person. So we can understand there's a lot of emotion attached to that. And obviously, it's been a very emotional press conference where a lot of this stuff has sort of come out. But we have to respect that as well, that these are assets to the football club, and managers essentially, we talk about availability all the time, don't we? Like, essentially, that's a big part of our role, whether you're in a club or not. You want your players to be available,
Mm.
and that's what coaches want. That's what head coaches want. Managers want. They want their players to be available,
Mhm.
and we've got to understand that fact. And that's probably come into it a lot, that this player's been taken away for however many games it was. The other point I was going to make on the trust between players and practitioners is, I mean, I had this recently speaking to someone that was going through a rehab, and at that club throughout his rehab, he had a physiotherapist that started the rehab. He had surgery, started the rehabilitation. That physio then left the club. They got another physio in as like a consultant. So the consultant was working remotely a lot of the time, sending over programs to take over this next stage of the rehab program. Then they then appointed someone full time. So then they had a physio again that came in, a different person. So there was 3 physios that went through this rehab process. And we know with anything like there's not consistency there. Those 3 people are probably going to work very differently across this injury. And that, for me, explains it quite well on why a player would go, actually, and obviously that's not going to happen all the time, but we know that coaches move. Like,
Mm.
they're not going to stay at the clubs forever.
Mm.
So if you think you can just build that relationship with the players and then that's that done,
Mm.
different players are coming into the club and coming and going,
Mm.
but different coaches are coming into the club and going as well. And that's even without talking about manager sackings and staff completely being turned up one day and the manager's gone, but all the staff are gone as well.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at consistency for the player, a player might be looking at thinking, if I've got my own S&C and I've got maybe my own physio, I know whatever I've got to deal with, they're my people. I can go to those people, and that's the consistency. So I think that comes into it a lot as well, isn't it? That players want that. They want that consistency around them to allow them to perform. They don't want uncertainty.
Yeah.
So I
And
think
it's a no-brainer though. Like, you're 100% right because footballers, at the end of the day, it's their career. So that's a great example, that one, I think, actually, in terms of on long-term rehabs, you see it a lot. Obviously, that's what I do a lot of now with the hub and a lot of rehabs for a lot of players. You speak to them, and depending on the level of club as well, that's another point to add to a layer onto what you've just said there. If we're talking first team, Premier League, Championship, League, even League One, even League Two clubs, then yeah, they're going to have good staff around them. But obviously, every club is slightly different. Every club has a different wage structure. Every club has a different size of staff and everything. And we know that staff move. And we can speak from first-hand experience that in clubs, you are overstretched at times. And sometimes it is, we know what it's like. It's like spinning plates. So, if you are in a situation where you are a bit stretched thin, then lo and behold, sometimes, the quality of a rehab might drop, or the quality of the S&C sessions might drop because you're spinning too many plates and you're, trying to chase GPS reports when you should have been planning the gym sessions or whatever it might be, right? That will come through at some point, and players will pick that up and they'll go, actually, I know this guy or girl and I trust them. I'm going to jump in with them. We're going to do some one-to-one work because I believe in that a bit more, and I want that sort of higher level of just me, focus on just me. I don't think that's wrong, personally. I don't. I think a player is well within their rights and entitled to wanting what is best for them and their career, ultimately.
Mm.
And I can speak like just going back to the rehab and the level of club element though. Um, we've returned a few players from some serious some injuries, and I won't mention the clubs and stuff, but the level of staff within those clubs, now they weren't Premier League first team, they were semi-pro clubs, but they were still, in terms of the first team level, they were still high level football. Um, but when they're under 23s or maybe under 18 set up, again, the staff structures aren't the first team environment, right? So this player had very limited access to a sports therapist, and that was all. That was all that he had access to. And that person, that sports therapist, was stretched thin beyond belief anyway, because they were basically dealing with the entire academy. And that's pitch side, that's being present at every training, being present at every match, but also then responsible for all of the rehabs and long-term rehabs and pitch rehabs and gym rehab, right? So how can that all fall on one person's shoulders, realistically? And how can it still be 10 out of 10 quality? It can't, it physically can't, right? And so player came to us, and luckily I knew the player from back in Bournemouth days anyway. And then we were able to provide that level of support in terms of that long-term rehab, and we liaised with the club. And actually the club were very happy because we were sending GPS reports of all the running work they'd done that week, all the S&C programs that we were doing, and to the point where we even I even put together like a phased, if you want to put a best practice example of how it could look when they go back into training, based off the GPS reports that we've been doing with non-contact training, when they team training and then contact training in the team. These are the distances we've done. This is the exposure to high speed running. This is the exposure to accel decel work, top end speed, etc. So next week when they're not with me, these are the sort of things that you could look at. Now, I would argue that's really good practice. There's still things that could have been improved. 100%, there always is, but that is better practice with us than he could have got at this club.
Mm.
So I don't see in any which way how somebody could turn around from the club and go, that you shouldn't be doing that, because that
Yeah.
player's received a better level of care, not through the fault of the club,
Mm.
purely for the fact that the club's structure and the staffing structure didn't allow for that level of staff to provide that level of care. So I can't really, I can't really sit on the side and say, no, external practitioners are bad. This is all tarnishing all the same brush again, because that level of care can occur, and that is doing the right thing for the player at the right time, in my opinion. So just wanted to make that point as well.
I think where the real mistakes are made is, and we talk about this all the time, is where there's not clear communication between both sides. And
Yeah.
you've already mentioned about players like essentially doing the work in literally in private.
Mm.
And I don't think that's right. I think
Mm.
that clubs should at least know what they're doing, and they should have the ability to reach out to said person to find out the details of what the players are doing.
Mm.
I don't think it should be a separate thing. I think that's where it gets really, really blurred in terms of like what's being done, because you could be duplicating a program, you just don't know, do you? And you can speak to players, but at the end of the day, players aren't going to give you all the details. They'll give you some, and
Mm.
obviously we want to have as many conversations with them as possible. but they're not going to fully understand the work that the club is doing, why they're doing it at certain times, and also maybe some points that they need to work on. They'll have their perspective. They might even have a coach's perspective. But if you have a proper conversation with a coach at clubs, which I've done, I've spoken to them and said, listen, they're going to come in. Is there anything specific you'd like us to work on? And the ones that you have good conversations with are like, actually, yeah, we've been meaning to do this. We want to look at this a little bit more. And this is what we're actually going to do in the club. Cool. That works. That gives me a really good picture of what's going on week to week. Obviously, then the understanding of football comes into it in terms of schedules, because that changes all the time. How do we change things if a player is going to come in during a really busy period? Do we switch to more of like a recovery session, or do we just stick by our guns and still put them through the same sort of session we had planned? These are things that you've got to take into consideration. But the real key to it is that communication. And I know that on a private side, some people aren't willing to do that, which I don't think is right. I know on a club side, some coaches aren't willing to do that, which I also don't think is right. I think there needs to be somewhere in between where we can have these conversations. And you obviously reference people already that are in clubs that are not necessarily welcoming it, but they're accepting it and going, I want the best for my players. How do we move forward doing what you're doing and doing what we're doing, and provide the best practice for them?
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? That's it, the nail on the head. It's how do we provide the best practice for those players? Yeah, I think the communication communication, sorry, is absolutely key, like you say. And I know I won't flog that point to death, but yeah, it's a strange one when the practitioners don't want to, the private practitioners don't want to, speak to the coaches, because, like I said, you're at risk at the end of the day. If it all does go wrong and you do break a player, the club are going to turn around and go, what have you been doing to the player? And the player's going to, I've been going and seeing this practitioner. So it makes sense for the practitioners to want to find out what's going on. But it's a great point in terms of the players aren't going to give you all the information. And they're probably, let's be honest, if you're an S&C coach at a club, you've had to go through a decent, let's be honest, a decent level of education to be at that point. We're going to understand the differences between when we're going to start to apply a microdosing model versus a traditional strength block, for example, right? Is your average footballer going to understand that? Is your average footballer going to understand actually the reason we're only doing, I don't know, 2 sets of 3 of Nordics or a different exercise, whatever exercise you want to pick, is because we're actually microdosing at the minute. Yeah. Whereas if you went and asked the player, oh, what have you done this week? Oh, we only did like 30 minutes of gym. And oh, right, what did you do? Oh, we did like 2 sets of stuff. Like we barely did anything. And it straight away they're thinking, oh, I've not done much gym. Now, again, practitioners at the club might explain this is why we're doing this, we're microdosing and all that sort of stuff. So some players are going to be clued up in it. I'm not tarnishing everyone's same brush. But some players might not understand the nuances. They might not understand that level of detail. So if you're just going off what the player says, you could end up in that situation where the player says, oh, we didn't really do much. We only did about half an hour's worth of gym. It was quick get in, get out, and we only did a few lifts and did a few sets. So you as a practitioner might think, oh, great. They've not done much this week then. Let's do some more. And actually, you've just gone the complete opposite direction from what the club were trying to do in the first place. So that can all be alleviated, like you say, by you as the practitioner going, such and such we've had in. What's their weekly like? Oh, by the way, we're currently microdosing because we know in 4 weeks' time we've got a horrible fixture congestion period. So we're just trying to get as much as we can into them, but in a safe way that's not going to make them sore because we're looking at training, whatever it is, right? So yeah, there's problems. There's a lot of problems which stack up if you're not communicating very well, and I'd say quite quickly as well, I would say.
Yeah, it's a brilliant point. I think that's the absolute key, and probably the biggest thing I feel like I want people to take away from the episode is that's how we move forward, in my opinion, and probably your opinion as well. I feel like very strongly that's how we move forward. The other thing I wanted to bring up was the comment that was made around insurance. And again, I've not got the direct quotes in front of me, but basically referring to the fact that, like, are they insured to do this and work with players? If you are working with players privately and you don't have the right cover in place, you need to sort that now.
Mm.
because that is stupidity. Like you should have the right level of cover. And obviously, without going into different insurance like programs or whatever they are, like I'm no expert on that, but there's loads of companies out there that will sort that out for you, and you should have that in place. You need to be paying for that. That should be in place. We know that the coaches that we've referenced have that in place.
Yeah.
But the fact that you can reference that in a press conference again to say that are they even insured and that sort of thing, well, yeah, he is, and we know that other people are as well. But there will be some out there that aren't and that haven't got the right cover. And if you are working with players and you don't have the right cover and something happens, good luck
Mm.
because that isn't going to go well at all. You're working with assets of football clubs, and you need to have that in place. And you need to have that in place regardless of who you're working with, to be fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
But especially for players, like we upgraded ours as soon as we got any players into our facility. Ours went up, and I think it's the top cover that we could get now. You need to be doing the same. It's simple. I just wanted to raise that because I think it's one thing where it's just like if that isn't in place, that's mind-boggling that you've not got that in place.
And it's expensive. I will again. I'll open up and be honest on that. It's expensive.
Yeah,
Expensive, but that's the reality. If you're working with high level players, you need high level quality cover. And I had this issue previously where when we started the hub and we got the insurance in place, there were companies that go, "Who do you work with?" And we said professional footballers, semi-professional footballers, and they said, "Oh, we don't deal with that." um, because of permutations of it. So that is a thing. So some people might go, I'll cut that corner. Like you said there, good luck. Luckily, there are also providers which will touch that, and you have to go through them. And like I say, you do pay a premium for that,
yeah,
but there is a reason. There is a reason why. So it 100% you have to be insured. You have to know um, yeah, you have that security in place as well. And I think it's important. I just wanted to make the point, um, again, knowing your players inside out in terms of we're very lucky at the hub because a lot of our staff still work at Bournemouth. I'm ex-Bournemouth and we work with Bournemouth players, certainly some academy players who I know very well from working there. So because we have staff who still are at the club and at the hub, we know exactly what they're doing inside and out because literally I can, like I said on the episode I think with Sam, and when I was previously still working with Bournemouth, I'd be coaching these players in Bournemouth kit on a Tuesday, and then I'd be working with them on a Friday in hub kit at the hub, right? So I know what I did with them on Tuesday. So that's really, that's a perfect blend because I've seen what's happening with the club. I've got their testing scores, I've got their maturation status. If they're academy players, that's a big one, by the way. Working with youngsters, I would point that one out. So I can blend everything that we do at the hub with those players. I know not everyone, private practitioners, are not going to have that luxury. They're not probably going to work with the players at the club. They might not have staff around them who also do. But you don't need that level. If you can just reach out to anyone, one of the sports scientists, one of the S&C coaches, just to get a little bit of context around that, I think that's really important. And certainly for your academy players, I know we've had a lot of episodes with me talking about maturation and the importance of it. If you are working with youngsters who are based at academy football, who are training 3 full nights a week, playing games at the weekend, and they are still growing, you owe it to that player to understand where they are in terms of their growth spurt. Um, if you have no idea where they're at and you're just cracking on willy nilly, going, right, let's get you lifting, let's get you jumping and landing, let's get you doing some harsh decel work or something along those lines, and they're going right slap bang through the middle of their growth spurt, I would argue you are not doing the right thing for that player. In fact, I'm going to tell you, you're not doing the right thing for that player. So that's just another point. On top of insurance, you need to know as much detail about the player you're working with. Certainly youngsters. And then when they're fully mature, let's say they are a 28-year-old pro, you need to know their full history of injury. If you're not, you're leaving yourself open to a lot of issues. And again, they might not be able to tell you everything, but you need to try and learn as much as you possibly can. And again, if you're not doing best practice because you're not doing what's right for the player. Um, and the final thing I'll probably say on this as well is like I think a good way of telling if you are doing the right thing for the player is asking yourself, who's this for? If I'm working with this player, you know, and let's say I'm taking videos and all this sort of stuff, is that video looking at me coaching them? You know, is it looking at me and what I'm doing? Is it a nice little cool exercise that I've seen on Instagram and I'm trying to show how I'm coaching it with this player and it looks cool and glitz and glam? Is that genuinely the right thing for that player? Because I always say it, a nice set of good form RDLs isn't that sexy a video. Doesn't get that many clicks. But like to really cool, like plyometric, rebound jump or something along those lines, it gets more clicks because it looks cool. So you've got to ask yourself what is the purpose of the session? Is it we're just trying to improve your general strength? You're coming back from injury. It's not going to look that cool online. But if you're trying to just throw things into that program to make it look cool, you're not doing the right thing for the player, in my opinion. So just to make that point and hopefully hammer that home as well. So I'll leave it there.
And again, just on that, just to finish up, like there's some of the people we've mentioned already do a brilliant job of not only delivering a high quality program, but also showing it on social media and actually showing and giving rationale behind what they're doing and why they're doing it and the timing of when they're putting it into the program and how it benefits the player and all that sort of stuff as well. So it can be done at a really good level, which it is. And listen, I know this episode and this topic will cause a lot of debate. People will have very strong opinions on it. We felt we needed to jump on and discuss it. Hopefully, it's been beneficial for people. But also, I'm sure people will have different opinions. You might disagree with some of the things we've said or a lot of the things we've said. That's fair enough. Well, let's talk about it. So if you wanted to put posts on when we put this episode out, getting a bit of conversation going, reaching out to us on our socials at Football Fit Fed on Instagram, on X or LinkedIn, do it because let's talk about this and let's try and find the best way possible of moving forward with this. Whether you are at a club, whether you are private, whether you are both or neither, let's talk about it because I think that's the most important thing.
100%. Yeah, we only get better through discussing this because you'll pick someone up from somebody. So please, like at every episode, we always say it. Like, please share, give us your takeaways, give all of this stuff. But let's open a good, genuine discussion about this and be open to it as well. We know football is full of egos, and we sometimes get protective over. Oh, one of our players has gone and worked with them. Why has that happened? Like, ask why, ask the player, but also have a think and let's just be open and sometimes, dare I say it, vulnerable to change. I think that's something that's really important. So yes, very interesting topic. Very interesting topic.
Well, Jordan, thank you for coming on, mate. I think
No problem.
it was important timing for us to do this. So I hope people have enjoyed listening. And like you said, just reach out and let's get some good discussions going on it. And we'll speak to you again in the next episode.
Yeah, can't wait.